not implying that you don't think she's competent to be the president of the United States, right?
I'm saying the media is covering for her right now the same way they covered for Biden for 3 years.
You think they're covering, or you think that she's just using her
They're not playing
strategy?
hard. They're not paying this. She's using a strategy. Okay, I think she's using some smart.
Which politicians do.
That's fine, but I think it's the media's job now to cut through that strategy and say this person very well could be the president of the United States. Has at least a 50% chance right now, according to most forecasts, of being the next president. She deserves to be questioned, not with kid gloves, but questioned with the gloves off.
Man, they didn't brought Vivek back on the show. What are they thinking? This video is brought to you by TatumStore.com. TatumStore.com. Make sure you get the merch link in the description section. Like and subscribe to the channel. Y'all already know what to do. Discount code will pop up here. Get the brand new merch. Link is in the description. Let's get into this. Make sure you hit the like button. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to play this clip with Vivek Ramaswamy and Charlamagne from The Breakfast Club. Do I want to go on The Breakfast Club one day? I don't know. I really don't know if it'll be a fruitful conversation. I think that it could be fruitful because I feel like they rarely bring on black people who come from a black community that is now conservative. I feel like a lot of times they try to get people on that grew up outside of the black community, therefore they can try to act like or treat them in the vein of otherism, and they don't want to bring black people that come from a certain area to talk about these issues, because it's almost as if people like myself and others who have grew up in a black neighborhood growing up or lived in a black neighborhood growing up, that we like the whistleblowers. They can't gaslight these black people like Charlamagne them. They can't gaslight black people that grew up in the inner city or grew up in a black neighborhood like they did. Because you can talk all this stuff about how you think black people do this, black people do that, and many people won't call them out on the fact that it makes absolutely no sense for Charlamagne or anybody on the show to be supporting Democrats. It makes no sense. They have no argument. They cannot support it. Anyway. Vivek Ramaswamy does a really good job on these shows. I think he is presenting himself incredibly presidential. I really would like to see Donald Trump show up on the show. I really would like to see Donald Trump on the show. Just imagine if Donald Trump was on the Breakfast Club talking. It'd be a total different conversation. I honestly believe that. Roll the clip.
I want to ask you a thing about the flip-flopping, too. Isn't that what politicians do, though? And what I mean by that is J.D. Vance was calling Trump America's Hitler. Right, but now when it comes to Trump, he's the Hawk Tuah girl. Like he's just, he's sucking him off every chance he gets, and that's what a lot of y'all do. Like just politicians in general. You hear so many different Republicans have said so many negative things about Donald Trump, but then as soon as he becomes the nominee, everybody just falls in line.
And normally they fall in line in unison, and you can rage against the machine. It doesn't feel like Trump and Vance are like it's not there. Like
so what do you call that? Is that flip flopper?
So here's what I will say: is it fair game to press J.D. Vance hard on why he said certain things about Donald Trump before versus what his view is on Donald Trump today? Yes, I think that's fair game. And has he been pressed and has he answered for that? Yes, he has. What I would love to see is both candidates, and Kamala Harris hasn't done this yet. And I'd love to challenge her to do it because I think it's good for the voters of the country. She hasn't sat down for one media interview of a hard-pressing one-on-one variety yet. And she's actually the leading candidate now in many of the polls for U.S. president. So I just think we deserve a country where the people are willing to show up. She should show up here. She should show up on CNBC, where I was this morning, and actually engage in hard questions about what her beliefs are. You saw JD, say what you will, on 3 shows yesterday, pressed on exactly that very issue. And I think that's good for the American people to then be able to make their own judgment. It's not your judgment or the journalist's judgment, but it's what people at home are able to see to assess. Do I actually believe somebody who believes they changed their mind over the course of time? Kamala Harris might have changed her mind, and I think it's okay. Flip-flopping is one thing, changing your mind thoughtfully is another. But you deserve to be questioned on it, and it's up to the voters to decide whether or not they believe you. Right now, we're not getting that chance. And I do think it is, you're saying, well, hopefully we're going to see that. I'm not sure yet that we will. It's been about a solid month that Kamala Harris has been the presumptive nominee. We got the convention coming up, this coming week, next week. I think it is vital for the health of this country that the same treatment that the media gave Joe Biden in that last few weeks after his debate, they didn't do that for 3 years. For 3 years, we missed that. The fact that it took that early debate and Donald Trump demolishing him in that debate for the country to suddenly wake up and say that Joe Biden is not a functioning U.S. president is actually a damning indictment of the entire media and its relationship to the political class.
I wonder why the Breakfast Club don't bring on other people than Vivek and some of these other safe people. They should bring on J.D. Vance. They should bring on Donald Trump. They should bring on Kamala Harris. They should bring on Tim Walz. They should bring on other political candidates that they wouldn't normally have on the show. See, this is why I wish I had a show like this, because I feel like I would bring on people that wouldn't necessarily be the group of people that we would want to hear, like being in the echo chamber. If I had a show, I'll bring on an AOC. Now, she's not going to come on the show, but I'd bring on somebody like AOC because I don't mind challenging any of these people politically. It's not even close to me. They got to jump through a hoop and turn into a pretzel to try to prove a point that does not exist. There's nobody that can argue that the border is a catastrophe. Or how can you argue that illegal immigration is just as good as regular immigration? I don't even know how people draw that conclusion. It's insane to me that you think it's fair that somebody had to get in line, fill out all that paperwork, pay $20,000 or something, wait 3 years to have citizenship in this country versus somebody just walked over here yesterday. Bro, what world does that make sense that's fair? Just that alone is not fair. Anyway, there's a lot of other stuff. Let me let him continue.
So we can't make that same mistake with Kamala Harris. I think the media needs to demand that she at least face the same kind of questioning that, frankly, J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are getting right now. And then the public it's up to them to decide. That's a functioning democracy.
Because you're not implying, by her not doing the interviews and based off of the way that Biden was treated in those last couple of weeks, you're not implying that you don't think she's competent to be the president of the United States, right?
I'm saying the media is covering for her right now the same way they covered for Biden for 3 years.
You think they're covering, or you think that she's just using her
They're not playing
strategy?
hard. They're not paying this. She's using a strategy. Okay, I think she's using some smart.
Which politicians do.
That's fine, but I think it's the media's job now to cut through that strategy and say this person very well could be the president of the United States. Has at least a 50% chance right now, according to most forecasts, of being the next president. She deserves to be questioned, not with kid gloves, but questioned with the gloves off, on what exactly her policy vision is for the country. Until that happens, I think the voters are hiding in the dark, and that's what allows the machine to work. Because we know she's questioned a lot on that behind closed doors. Who's funding the campaigns of both parties? Behind closed doors, a lot of donors ask a lot of questions. That's how you raise hundreds of millions of dollars in just 1 month. The voting public deserves that same level of transparency. And one of the things I will, say what you will about, you could criticize either side. I like that Donald Trump showed up at the Libertarian Party convention, right? That's a third party at a convention. I actually spoke there. He spoke there as well the next night. I like that he spoke to the National Association of Black Journalists in Chicago. I'd love for Kamala Harris to show up at the National Association of Black Journalists.
Well, she wanted to, but they wouldn't let her do the virtual thing. She does have a day job.
But the day
She's still
job,
vice president.
No, but the day job is running. Come on. At this point, she is going full time, reading off a teleprompter at the rallies, the same thing 4 times a day. She should show up for that interview. If Donald Trump sits down with the National Association of Black Journalists, I'm sorry, a scheduling excuse is not a valid reason for the
don't we know
competitor to also show up.
Now, we all know why she didn't show up, because she can't. They're going to use the same strategy that they used during the Biden administration or his run for office in 2020. They're going to shelter her. Listen, let me tell you guys this. I learned this a long time ago, and Donald Trump fails at this, and Republicans tend to fail at this. When I was a PIO, a public information officer for the Tucson Police Department, we went through a public information training, a PIO training. And in the training, it says, it doesn't matter what they ask you, you answer the talking points that you've already prepared. So therefore, if there was a homicide on the 1700 block of Fairview, I don't want to tell that there's a gun involved. I don't want to tell certain things because we don't want to give away the investigation. So I already know what talking points I'm going to say. So they say, Mr. Tatum, was there a gun used? I'm not going to say yes or no to that. I already have it in writing that this is a part of the investigation. The investigation is ongoing. It's a very sad situation. What happened to this young person? Gun violence is never the answer. I'm just going to say what I'm going to say. And why is that important? It's because they can't get sound bites of you saying anything other than the messaging that you want to put out there. And the people are going to forget you didn't answer the question, but they don't have a sound bite. What is Kamala doing? She's not going to get on an interview with Charlamagne and them and look like a fool. Therefore, they have evidence now that she don't know what the F she doing. If she just stick to talking on teleprompters and reading a unifying message that's scripted, that's the only content you have of her. Being a unifying force and up and beyond, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I'm just reading. Nothing substantive and nothing that can get me in trouble. If I could just escape till I get to November because people are dumb, then I could have a chance to win. Joe Biden did the same thing. He didn't debate. He didn't do nothing. I mean, he did debate, but he didn't do no appearances. He did nothing. He sat in a hidden place hoping that Donald Trump would fail on his own so he could try to win. That's exactly what she's doing. Wrote a clip.
But if Kamala, not to cut you off, I'm sorry. If Kamala sits down with NABJ, we know where she's going conversation wise, right? I think it's honestly,
not necessarily true. I don't think that's true. I think the person who did that interview for Donald Trump, if they had taken the same approach with respect to Kamala Harris, I think that'd actually be pretty good conversation for the country.
I don't know if she would. I want to see her on. I want to see the vice president on Fox News.
Yeah, I think she should go across the room.
Even better. Even better, right? So one of the things I liked, I mean, Donald Trump went to the Bronx. People could say it wasn't the real Bronx or whatever, but he showed up in the Bronx. He showed up in the South Bronx. Showed up in inner cities in the country. Even in my own campaign, I went to the south side of Chicago, went to a room full of, 95% black, 95% Democrat, not a traditional Republican primary location. Mm-hmm. I went to Kensington in the inner city of Philadelphia. Speaking as a former candidate myself, I could tell you those trips had an impact on me, right? It had an impact on my view of a national unity that I believe is possible in this country that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't showed up there. I'd love to see Kamala Harris go into rural Mississippi, go into Alabama, showing up at a Fox News moderated town hall.
Well, she does do that. Now, we can't act like she doesn't do that. I mean, even the past week, she hit all of the battleground states, and she's actually hitting the street, which I think in a lot of ways is more effective right now than sitting
with
down and doing an
hostile questioning,
interview.
though, is not. I want to see her answer questions from people who disagree with her. That's what the country's founded on. Okay, so face off with the people you disagree with.
So like town halls, you mean?
Yeah, town halls.
I'm not mad at that.
And or hostile journalists. Mm-hmm. And here's why. When you stop talking
not
to people
hostile, hard hitting.
Yeah, hard hitting.
Yeah, I was about to say, because you see black women in a hostile situation. Did you see that when you went to them places? She gonna know how to handle it. She gonna be.
Somehow they don't know how to raise them kids right, huh? Hostile home life, kids come out being thugs. Not all of them. But don't be acting like it's a blanket statement that black women know how to handle hostile situations. I think they do poorly in hostile situations, to be quite honest. And not, like I said, not all of them. The one that's watching it right now, you perfect, girl. You ain't nothing wrong with you. It's your baby daddy fault. Anyway, roll the clip.
Good.
I hope so. We'll see. I hope so for the country. But here's what I will say is, when you stop talking to people who disagree with you, it becomes a lot easier to demonize them.
I agree.
And that's what happens in the country. So say what you will about, I know we probably have different views on who we're voting for this cycle. But I will say more so than most Republicans, and in this cycle more so than the Democratic opponent, Donald Trump has talked to people who disagree with him, faced off more than Kamala Harris has, and I think she has a couple months left to see if she has it in her to level up. If you want to sit across the table from Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin, then you better be willing to sit across the table from your fellow Americans who disagree with you and face that questioning too. And that's my challenge to her. If she does that, I'm not going to say I'm going to vote for her. But because I disagree with her on the policies, but I will respect her as a candidate in a way that I don't until she actually does it.
You're not just going to support your fellow Indian because she's an Indian?
Well, I would say that one of the things actually funny you bring that up in the, I believe we're all American. We got to vote in policy, of course. A lot of the Indian American community is a little bit disappointed or a little bit offended, at least at the fact that she doesn't really own that part of her identity anymore. And the way she did before, right? I'm not saying that. I'm just
she owns both.
She don't own both, man. She don't own both. Don't
blame the messenger, but I'm telling you, you can take it as a fact that a good, at least in my read of it, I think a lot of Indian Americans do have a little bit of disappointment about that. My whole view is I don't like identity politics, period, right? One direction or another. We got to revive our shared American identity. Okay, and so if we are really committed to the ideals of this country, I think we should focus on what policies are you advancing, regardless of your race, regardless of your skin color. So whether she's dealing with a tax or she's dealing with leaning into it, I'm against it in both forms. Forget the identity politics around the board and focus on how you're going to have policies that lift up all Americans. That's what I favor talking about. But since you bring it up, I'm just Don't shoot the
the
messenger
American
here.
dream, but-
I think there are some Indian Americans out there that do feel some sense of offense.
And there's black people out here that feel some sense of offense of what Kamala Harris is doing. You can't just claim Indian the majority of your career when it's advantageous, because there's no advantageous leverage point for you to be the first black, because you're not the first black in any of those things. But you can be the first Indian, so they call you Indian. You know, it's crazy to me. Like if you could say, if a mixed race person ran the 400-meter hurdle and broke the record, why wouldn't they say the first white, she's the fastest white woman in American history in the 110 hurdles? Like, why are the 400-meter hurdle? Why wouldn't they ever say? They'll never say anything like that, because in America, if you're black and white, you're defaulted as black. Nobody would ever use any of these other races, especially if you mix with white, to your advantage, and then later on call yourself black. That you can't find a person. You can't find a person. Even Colin Kaepernick never claimed to be white and then try to say he's black. Even Barack Obama never said he was white and then try to say he was black. Like nobody that's black and white has ever used white and black together in conjunction and claimed both. Nobody in history of the world. It wouldn't even be acceptable. So how can you do Indian and black like that? And black folks should be, it's crazy. The party of diversity can't give you a black person who is a descendant of slaves. They can't produce anybody like that. Barack Obama definitely wasn't. Kamala Harris definitely isn't. What are we talking about? They can't produce a black person? No. They only can give you these mixed people that they pose as black when it's convenient. Ain't nobody from the inner city or nothing like that, or nobody that's, like I said, is a descendant of African slaves. Not one person. None. But they pass it off on y'all every election season, and you hook, line, and sinker buying into it. Shout out to Vivek Ramaswamy. Good video, brother. I'm out.